Hello, listeners. Yamina here. Welcome to the Dr. GPCR podcast. Before we dive into this episode, I have a few announcements for you. We hope you were able to join us last month for the second edition of the Dr. GPCR Summit. It was a great week filled with amazing talks from amazing speakers from all around the world, including early career scientists. Find out more about the winners of the best talks given at the summit by the next generation of GPCR scientists by following us on social media today. Also, you can now watch the talks from the summit on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe today. You will get notified whenever we share new videos, and it is also a great way to support our work. Another great way to support us is by subscribing to the Dr. GPCR newsletter. The upcoming newsletter contains the summit survey. We want to hear from you. Tell us what you'd want us to keep, improve, and how to make Dr. GPCR work for you. Stay tuned for the upcoming Dr. GPCR Virtual Cafe events. Visit drgpcr.com to find out more about all our activities. And now, let's dive into this episode. Hello, everyone. This is Yamina for the Dr. GPCR podcast. Today, I'm excited to have with me Mark Schmeizl. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Yamina.
It's great to have you on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm really excited to be talking to you. You have a little bit of a different background compared to our previous guests. You are you are the president and managing partner of an executive recruiting firm. And I'm excited to talk to you because, as you know, most of our audience on the Dr. GPCR podcast are trainees, postdocs, PhDs. And I think our discussion is going to be valuable for them to know more about you, what you do, but as well about your advice. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for that introduction. So I've been in the life sciences industries for over 25 years before moving into recruiting. Worked for companies that provide research tools to pharmaceutical and biotech scientists, companies like PerkinElmer and Lake Pharma and Cisbio. In that time, I was on the commercial side building sales, marketing, and tech support teams, and worked with recruiters throughout the entire time. And what I found is that a good recruiter is somebody who understands the industry, takes the time to understand the needs of the candidate and the needs of the client. And really focuses on making a good match. And I felt like it was a great opportunity for me to leverage some of the experience that I've had over the years in helping people find good career paths. And it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad. And just to mention to our audience, you mentioned PerkinElmer and you also mentioned Cisbio. And it's so funny, the world is such a small place. It turns out that before we got introduced through another person, after we got introduced, we realized that we had so many connections in common, and I know a couple of people from Cisbio.
It's the life sciences community is a wonderful, rich community, but you find out each year that it's actually relatively small, and everybody's connected to everybody.
Somehow. And interestingly, I remember that during one of our phone calls, I was talking to you about the Dr. GPCR newsletter, and you had mentioned that actually someone who you told them about the newsletter, and they said, "Of course, I know the newsletter. I use it all the time."
It's growing in popularity. You're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So you mentioned that you were working in industry. You were working on the marketing teams and on the sales teams. What was that breaking point in your career where you said, well, I'd rather start something on my own?
It's an interesting point. So I think it's like most people. You get to a point where you've accumulated enough experience that you feel like you have the ability to do something on your own. I think that there's a lot of people who are highly entrepreneurial and are very brave, and they jump into these kinds of things early in their careers. For me, it was reaching a point where I really felt like I had something to give, and a good, strong network to work with, and to help people. I think that it was just a matter of really feeling like I was confident and comfortable and experienced. And those things came together with my desire to be in business for myself, and just jumped in about 4 years ago.
That's awesome. Actually, you make a great point on the confidence, because you mentioned experience in the beginning, and I think as a trainee, no matter what your background is, when you're studying, quote unquote, or doing experiments in the lab as a postdoc, you gain experience with time, and that experience brings on confidence to do something on your own. And I think that's a very important thing to distinguish, because I feel as a postdoc, when I was a postdoc and a PhD student, I looked up to all the professors, and I looked up to all of those people who are further out in their career, not realizing that it's just a matter, quote unquote, just a matter of experience, which brings confidence.
Mm-hmm. It really is, and you also have to recognize what your strengths and your weaknesses are. For example, I've never done IT before, so I had to find a company to support me with the IT services. Things you know what your strengths are, but also knowing what your weaknesses are, and finding ways to compensate for those weaknesses. I think goes a long way. I really wanted to focus on the recruiting side of things, and so I outsource accounting and IT and legal. All those things are done for me by people who are much more capable than I in those specific areas.
And then the good thing is that since you had a great network, you already knew who to talk to, or at least you already knew who to ask for introductions to get. To surround yourself with the accounting, the legal side, the IT side, and then again, comes with confidence, comes with experience.
For me specifically, I joined Global Recruiters Network. There's 200 plus offices just like mine that are independently owned and operated, but we're all part of GRN, and it's Global Recruiters Network that provides all those back office functions for me and support. It's a wonderful organization. I'm really happy to be part of it.
That's so great. See, I didn't know that. I learn something new every time I talk to a guest. That's fantastic. So how do you spend your days?
On the phone as much as possible. It's really a networking job, and so I think all the years of experience in sales certainly helps a lot. But I find that the more I'm speaking live to people, the more I can learn about their careers, about their goals. You can look at a profile or a resume and get one picture in your head, and then get on the phone with somebody and find out that person is so much more than what's presented in their resume or on a LinkedIn profile, that it's really, really vital to get live conversations going with people. So as much as possible, I'm on the phone. When I'm not on the phone, I'm doing research to try to identify the up and coming technologies and companies in our industry. Also the venture capital and private equity companies that back our industry, trying to identify people there to network with. And just really trying to be as up to date as possible about what's happening, and what are the trends, and are the companies hiring people who have experience in protein expression now, or is it all cell therapy, or is it what is the hot area of the year, so to speak, and then networking to find people who have the skills that the companies are looking for.
That's so interesting. You make a great point about networking, and we're going to get back to it in a second. I wanted to ask you about industry trends and about which companies you work with versus which candidates. Do you follow the industry trends as to which companies you're interacting with and what kind of candidates you bring to them?
So I think that's going to differ from one recruiting firm to another. Mine's very small. We call it boutique. It's the the term that people use. But because we're small, we have to really focus on building a good relationship with our clients and building strong relationships with our candidates. And so I mentioned before, working with venture capital and private equity companies. One of the advantages there is if I speak to a partner at a venture capital company, that individual represents a portfolio of companies that have just gotten funded, are growing, looking to hire. And so, that's obviously a very valuable use of my time. I can speak to those people and really identify the companies that are recently funded. And so most of the opportunities I work on and the companies I work with, the clients I work with, come through that type of a discussion. And really this industry, like most, is driven by the finance, right? And so the money gets funneled to the companies that are working on the hottest technologies and the latest trend. You kind of follow the money, you find the trend.
Of course.
And so that's one way to do it. But gene therapy, cell therapy, protein-based therapeutics, those are the hot areas right now. Have been hot for a while, and continue to be the areas that are getting the most funding.
That's great. You made a couple of great points in your answer. Let's get back to the networking part. I know that for a lot of people, especially in academia, the term networking is such a wide term. Networking, what does that mean? Can you give us a couple of examples on how you network?
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly, I think it's an essential part of anybody's career. So networking to me is basically talking to people and forming relationships and getting introductions from one person to another. And there's so many forums for that. There are networking events. I'm in the Boston area, and there's BioExchange, where it's virtual networking. Right now it's virtual because of COVID, but it used to be people got face to face and shook hands and got to know each other. Attending events like that, attending trade shows, and going to there's always a networking event at every trade show, right? There's a cocktail hour. There's just time for people to mingle and talk to each other. And then there's professional organizations, Mass Biotech Council. There's Dr. GPCR. There's all sorts of different ways where you can meet people who are in the industry and form relationships. And to me, that's what networking is: meeting people, forming relationships. And the really amazing networkers out there are the ones who can say, "Oh, I just met Joe. He does cell therapy work, specifically in this particular oncology." And on the other side of the room, I met Sally, and she does drug discovery or gene expression work that is particularly targeted towards cell therapy. And then you take these two people and you bring them together, and you Sally meet Joe, because you guys have a lot in common and should be talking to each other. And I think those people who have that skill are just incredibly valuable at these networking events. And so I always encourage people to introduce people, hey, I just met these two. They should know each other because they have a lot in common, and just bring them together.
I think that's the best way to network, because this way you've been kind to Joe and to Sally, and hopefully they're going to have a great relationship. And what they'll remember about you is that you introduced them, and
right.
You were the conduit to that relationship.
Yeah, and it's really I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. It's just it feels good, right? People feel good about helping other people, and they remember people who help them. It is. People sometimes look at networking as this. What's the word I'm looking for here? It's just kind
transactional?
Of necessary evil, so to speak. But in reality, it's really just doing good things for good people.
Exactly. I think if I can add something to that. So basically, my idea of networking before starting Dr. GPCR, and what I've noticed before starting Dr. GPCR, is really having. Let me take a step back. We talked about confidence, and I think confidence comes with experience. But when you're experienced and you're confident, and you go to these networking events without knowing anyone, you have to be open to going to a group, or going to someone, shaking their hands and asking them questions about themselves. And that's the difficult part. But once you get through that, networking is really more than collecting business cards, more than reaching out to people on LinkedIn once and hoping that that's going to develop into a relationship. Basically, all I'm trying to say is that networking is making connections with people, but also giving it time. It's not a transactional interaction. Hey, Mark, I'm Yamina. I need a job, or I want this from you, and then I don't want to know anything about you.
Right.
I think a networking is building relationships, and it takes time, and you never know when that relationship is going to go to the next level. You never know when I'll introduce a candidate to you. I never know when you'll introduce me to someone with whom I'm going to form a partnership, have a great relationship. You never know these things.
You make a great point. It's really about building relationships.
It
You know,
is.
and those, and as you mentioned, some of those relationships will grow and flourish immediately, and some will, remain acquaintances for years and then all of a sudden grow. And you're right, you never do know, and so it's really important to always be open and always be, communicating and bringing people together.
I love that. I love that. I think we kind of touched on some of this point about what you like to do and the fact that you're connecting people and then you really have your ears open to industry trends. But I'm going to ask you this question: what is specifically inspiring you to do what you do on a daily basis?
So I know at different points in my career where it was challenging to find the next opportunity. And I think what really gets me motivated each day is meeting people, talking to them about their career, but also really trying to find out what is your goal. Where do you want to get to in the next 5-10 years? And then helping people to connect their goals with companies that need their skills and can provide the opportunity for them to reach their goal. Right? It's about, interviewing and finding a job is so much more than matching experience and skills to, the job description. You have to look at the culture of the organization, and the type of culture that the individual thrives in. You have to look at the relationship between, the employee and the supervisor. You have to look at what's the company all about. A lot of people want to work at a company that's making a difference for human health, or a company that's making a difference for the environment, or a company that is just, a fast, rapidly growing company where things are exciting and you always got to wear a different hat. Other people are much more interested in becoming experts at a very specific thing, and really understanding that particular area in great depth. And, so those two people are going to have different companies that they will thrive in. Right. And so to me, it's about making that match. It's getting somebody who's got passion and excitement and matching that passion and excitement with a company that needs the skills, but also provides the opportunity to enjoy your passion. And bringing those two together is always fun. I talked to people that I placed years ago, and if it's a good match, they're still excited and still learning years later. And so it's really, that's rewarding.
I love that. And while you were mentioning the fact that you like to make a match and you want to make sure that everyone's happy with that match, it sounds like you're almost running a matchmaking service, but in the context of work, basically, of a career.
It's professional matchmaking.
There you go. Yeah, I always think about interviewing and then making that match as kind of a dating game where you want to make sure that each party is happy and each party enjoys the company of the other party, but also they have that matching skills when it comes to that. I really love that. I love the matchmaking part of it. How do you celebrate whenever you make this match? Because you end up, you bring to a company and an employee together once they're on that path. And you mentioned that years later, they're still happy to have had that match. Do you celebrate somehow?
So on a couple of different levels. So with the candidate who's taken the new job, I always follow up. So 2 weeks after they start, 2 months after they've started, a year after they've been with the company, and just kind of having those conversations. Again, it's the relationship, right? You formed a relationship with someone through the process of helping them find a job. And it's continuing to build on that relationship. And each time we talk, it's a mini celebration, right? It's you're still happy. I'm so glad. This is great. What's the latest and greatest at your organization? What are they doing now that's got you excited and growing and learning new things? So those are like mini celebrations. And then within our group, we do things like every time somebody accepts an offer, we have a bell that we ring, and everybody dances and makes noise, and it sounds crazy, but it's a lot of fun. So you do. It's a really good point. I think in general, you have to celebrate small wins, big wins. Anytime something good happens and things are progressing and you're moving in the right direction, and something new and exciting is taking place, you have to take the time to celebrate those things. And it can be as simple as a quick phone call, just saying, "Hey, it's a year ago today. You accepted your offer." And just having that conversation is really rewarding.
I love that, and I agree with you. I think celebrating all small and big wins is very important, and stopping to take a moment, take a breath, and say, "Wow, we did this. This is amazing."
Yeah, it's good. It's good fun.
You'll have to share a video at some point, with you guys ringing the bell, and that could be a really great way to put it on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, we have another candidate who found their dream job," and not revealing anything, just making a video of you guys dancing and ringing the bell.
That's a great idea. Keep an eye out for that. It might just pop up in the next couple of weeks.
I think people would really love that. Let's kind of get more into the weeds of jobs and careers. Mm-hmm. What are the type of careers that scientists with a PhD can have?
There's an amazing diversity. There are so many careers. I mean, there's the obvious path of academic research and professorship, which is a wonderful and rewarding career path in its own. You've mentioned, going from academia to industry. On the industry side, there's everything from co-founding a company, being chief scientific officer, VP of research and development. But there's also roles like product management, moving into the marketing side of things. Or, I started at the bench as a research scientist at the University of Connecticut and moved into sales. Mostly because what I found is I really like interacting with people. And, by moving into sales in life sciences, I could still, have one hand in the biology side of things and the other hand on the business side of things. And it was exciting. And I'm always learning about new things, people telling me about their research. And it was so exciting to me. So there's all sorts of different directions you can go. Application support is an obvious overlap as well, because you gain some really valuable experience working in a laboratory that you can then utilize to help other scientists bring technologies into their lab and do it successfully. Because let's be honest, not every technology is plug and play, right? A lot of them require some specialized skills. And if you have those specialized skills, then you can use them to help other scientists with new technologies. So the career paths it's almost limitless, to be honest. And it's getting back to what we talked about. It's remaining open and networking and talking to people. And I always, advise people, if you meet somebody who's doing something that you think you might have an interest in, make arrangements to have a cup of coffee with that person and really just tell me about, how did you get into this career? What do you like about it? What are the frustrating? Everything is, two-sided, right? There's always some frustrating part to it or challenging part to it, let's call it. But you want to know what those are before you get into it. And so if you can talk to somebody who's actually had a career in, say, marketing, they started in the lab, moved into marketing, and they're now, leading a marketing team for a life sciences company. Hearing about that firsthand is really, really important. And so again, it gets back to the networking, but having the confidence to say, "Hey, let's have a cup of coffee if you don't mind. I would love to really hear about, your career and how you got to where you are." And people are always flattered when you ask that.
Yeah, so and that's one definition of networking. I've always found there are some terms that just don't make sense to me, and networking is like this word that people use to say, "Oh, you should be networking." But I think, reaching out to someone and saying, "Hey, I looked at your LinkedIn profile. I love your career path. I was wondering if you have, 5 minutes or 10 minutes to talk to me about your career." And you're right. People are always flattered to talk about themselves. And well, now with COVID, it might be difficult, but if it's possible, just go meet that person in real life and buy them a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. You have nothing to lose.
And you know what, even if you can't meet in real life, the technology that's available now, like what we're using, the video conferencing online, it's almost as good.
It is. And then we'll take whatever we have with the circumstances. And because we're both in Massachusetts, we're both in the Boston area. Mm-hmm. But this is so much easier right now. And I feel like it saves It doesn't replace the in-person meetings because, meeting you in person and shaking your hand and sitting across the table from you and drinking coffee is not the same thing as being on Zoom, but it's almost as good.
Well, then the other upside too, of course, is if we're not both in Boston, someone's in San Francisco and the other's in Boston, you can bridge that gap.
Yep.
And still have a really meaningful conversation with somebody.
Exactly, and you don't have to fly out and take time to meet that person. So that's definitely true. What I loved about the different career paths that you just described is the variety in them. And I think as a trainee, at least for me, when I was a trainee, I didn't even realize that there were so many options out there. And the main point that you made is really figure out what you like to do as a person, as a scientist, and then really try and match that to a position at a company that you like, and then go after that position. Because what we didn't talk about, we talked about a little bit about the different positions that people can have with a PhD, but we didn't talk about the different industries. So if you can comment a little bit about the different types of industry that are out there and what's the difference between a small company and a big company?
Sure.
On that.
Yeah. So by no means will this be a comprehensive list, but the
it's
industries
just to give an idea.
They're very diverse, right? You have pharmaceutical industry, of course, biotech industry, medical devices. There's the healthcare industry. There are research tools. There's if people like computers and software, there's the IT side, the bioinformatics side of the world. It's very, very diverse. Those are the ones I'm most familiar with because they're the areas that I work in. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of really good industries in that list, but those are the ones that come to mind immediately. And then companies, small companies versus large companies. It's hard to really. I missed our service industries like contract research organizations or contract manufacturing organizations. There's those as well. But with companies, very large companies, you have access to more resources. So you'll have access to more technologies and the opportunity to learn about what's the latest and greatest technology in single B cell sorting. In a smaller company, you have to wear multiple hats. So then you get exposed to more functions, right? You get exposed to, what's it like to have to go out and build relationships with key opinion leaders as a scientist who never left the lab before, right? So in a small company, something has to be done and there's 6 of us. Somebody has to bend over and pick it up,
Yep.
and just run with it. And I think to me, that's the biggest difference is, in a large company, you're going to have the resources, you're going to have the opportunity to be exposed to all these different technologies. But you're going to be more focused in what you do. In a smaller company, it may be resource constrained, but you're going to have these opportunities to do a breadth of different functions and gain experiences in areas that you otherwise might not have, been exposed to. Marketing, sales, outreach to people, outside of your company, customer interaction, those kinds of things that you don't have to do if you're at a bench in a large pharmaceutical company. So.
I love that, and I love that distinction between the small biotech or the small company and the large company. And the other thought I had while you were mentioning the different industries, another great way to contribute to science and using your scientific skills is being an analyst or working at these VC firms, where you don't do the actual bench work, but you contribute to bringing in new ideas, vetting new ideas, and seeing how these small biotech companies are being built.
That's a great point. And another industry that I skipped is the VC and private equity side of things. I think what I'm getting out of our conversation is just a real spotlight being shown on the diversity of things that you can do. There's just so many different things you can do. Yeah. And I talk to people all the time who never imagined themselves doing anything besides bench science. And after a certain number of years of doing bench science, they decided that they wanted to diversify what they're doing or get some new skill or some new experience. And they find themselves, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try working at a CRO instead of working at a biotech company. And what they find is, wow, at a CRO, I'm managing multiple parallel projects, 20 at a time. I've actually got a skill, at this project management and the ability to keep multiple, projects going forward on the timeline and within budget, right? Something that they may never have thought of before. Same scenario, working at a CRO. Now you're introduced to all the different customers, right? So you're talking to people at different biotech and pharma, or if you're a contract research organization in that space, and so your network immediately expands because of the fact that you're working at a company that provides services to all these other companies. And so I think that's just one example of just being open to trying something new. Of course, what we talked about before, you want to research it and have conversations with people who are in that field already. But being open to jumping in and trying something, I think is really, really important. And a lot of people have discovered a career path that they never considered before and found it to be incredibly rewarding. And so that's just keep the ears and the eyes open.
I love that. And you touched on a very important point about skills. You just mentioned that, as a bench scientist who, for example, would go into a CRO context as a project manager, they realize that they're able to manage 20 projects and they're able to, anticipate the needs and making sure that, the projects are finished on budget and on time. And it's a skill that people don't realize they have. Mm-hmm. So here's my question. What other skills that people learn at the bench can be translated into other types of positions in industry?
Wow. Okay. So, at the bench, obviously, you get the technical skills that you develop are going to be, that's quite often that's what's in demand, right? And I mentioned, single B cell sorting, because there's a lot of antibody-based therapeutics out there today, and a lot of companies are looking for people who have a specific skill set or have used specific technologies to help in antibody discovery. So I think what you can do at the bench is make sure that when that new technology is brought in, you get an opportunity to play with it, right? You may not have to be the point person, but take the time to sit down and you understand what does this technology do and how is it impacting the research? What advantage are we gaining by investing in this technology, right? And just kind of understanding the new things that are coming and going out of every lab, whether it's academia or industry. That's one thing when you're at the bench that you can work on. Try to get opportunities to present. I know a lot of people, hear the word and it immediately makes them nervous and scared. But I think presentation skills are so important, because if you're going to get into a job interview, you're presenting about yourself, right? And so just having the comfort, to do a presentation, to face an audience, to articulate and clearly express your points, communication skills, I think, can be built. And people talk about, bench scientists, communication. What are you talking about? It's, okay, I've done all this research and we have this wonderful data, and now we have to tell the world about it. Get out and present. I think those types of things are really, really important because it's a blend of skills, technical and interpersonal, that help people to advance.
I love that. I love the example that you had about presentation skills, and I think bench scientists who love to present. Not everyone does. I think if you're the type of scientist who doesn't like to present their work, it's something that you need to overcome, and you need to be able to be comfortable in front of an audience. But those who really love it, and actually, even though it's a learned skill, first of all, it's a learned skill, you will learn how to present. Being able to clearly articulate your ideas, to clearly present the data, is not just about the data. It's about your ability to to learn something analytical, or invent something or discover something, which I find it's an art, and then being able to tell the world about it. That means that when you're done with your bench work and you want to go into a different career, you're still taking those skills. You're not taking the data, but you're taking your ability to generate scientific data, to analyze scientific data, to summarize that information, and also to spread the word about it. And I think those skills are really important to have, but are really valuable in industry, in any type of job you may have.
I mean, what's funny about that is I've talked to so many scientists who say, I hate presenting. But the same person, if you sit down and have a conversation with them, like we're having right now, and ask them about their research, they love to tell you about their research, right? Because they've invested so much time and energy and thought into what they've done. And so it's basically just having that conversation like we're having right now, but doing it in front of an audience. And I think it's making that leap, that mental leap from, just being able to articulate in a even at lab meeting, right? When you're at the end of the week, you're sitting down at lab meeting, you're telling people, how the experiment went and what went right, what went wrong. You're presenting. So if you just kind of take that mental image, okay, I'm just going to a lab meeting and I'm going to present the work I've done. And eventually you can overcome the concern or the fear, if you will, of presenting to a group.
Yeah, I think some of the ways that I found to overcome that, that stressful moment when I have to present something. And so first of all, you have to accept the fact that you have an ego and you want to make sure that you're doing a good job and you're presenting something correctly. Now, what goes into that, into decreasing the nervousness, is practice,
right.
Sleeping well, and finding ways to cope with that stress. And I've always loved presenting, but I always feel stressed about it. I always feel nervous, especially when it's something live, when having people and then watching you, listening to you, and in my head there is a dialogue happening at the same time. I'm presenting and my head is like, no, this is not what you were supposed to say. But I think overcoming that and just going for it. And if you make a mistake, it's okay. At the end of the day, just be yourself, practice, be prepared. And I think that's one of the most important things, because it gives you confidence. And, doing it over and over and over again, that's what's going to make you become, a good presenter.
Yeah. And give yourself permission to make mistakes. Yes. Right. I think the best presenters are the ones who are very human, when they're up there presenting. Their personality comes through in the presentation. Those are the presenters that really draw you in, right? And what are they doing? They're just being human, and they're the first ones say, "I said that completely wrong. Let me rephrase it." And they just give themselves permission to make a mistake and go forward. And I think
exactly.
that's the key.
Exactly, I love that. And sometimes it does happen, that you have computer issues. Or, one time I was recording a podcast while we were still recording in my closet, and the desk that was attached to the wall just fell into my lap with the laptop on and the microphone, and we didn't stop. And yes, it was a nervous moment, but in my mind, I was like, well, it's going to be fun for whoever listens to this episode and they realize that this happened. It's a fun moment.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think presentations could be the same way, even if it's a job presentation. I think it's important that employees be themselves when they go to interviews. And I think it's important for employers as well to be themselves, and also for these people to see each other as they are on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Often when I'm talking to candidates who are preparing for an interview, the first thing I'll tell them is, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, right? It's back to that match we talked about earlier. Right. If you really want to find a great job that you're going to enjoy, you have to make sure that this company is everything they say they are. The person who's going to be your supervisor is a good mentor and somebody that you can learn from. And you should be interviewing them. And if at the end of the interview you're going, something's just not right, well, listen to your gut and look for another opportunity. There's a lot of opportunities in life sciences. And so, just because you have an interview doesn't mean it has to go. It doesn't have to end up in being hired. It can be something where you're interviewing them and you decide it's not a good fit for you, and that's exactly what you should do. You should basically say, I love this, or I'm not comfortable with this, and if it's not comfortable, move on until you love it.
I love that, and I think that's something that people need to hear, that employees need to hear, and also employers, because they need to realize that it's a win-win situation for everyone when there is that match happening. And if it's not, no hard feelings. It was great talking to you. Thank you so much. And then we move on to the next opportunity. I feel like sometimes people have this conception in their minds that the employer has the upper hand. But I think right now, with the hot job market that's out there, it's a misconception potentially, that it's really a win-win situation, and everyone should be able to say, we're not sure about this. Let's move on.
Yeah, I think it should always be a win-win situation. And I think, the market's going to ebb and flow, or it's going to be a situation where, they call it a candidate's market or an employer's market. Regardless of that, to me, it's always the same. The interview process is always the same. You really want to make sure it's a good match, because it's difficult for the company. It's difficult for the person who gets hired to start and find out this really was a mistake. And
Yes.
I'm laughing out of just kind of I don't know, empathy for people who are going through that scenario. And the interview process can be challenging because it's really hard to get a feel for the culture of a company during an interview. It's really hard to understand, is the person sitting across the table from me going to be a micromanager? These kinds of things are hard to draw out during an interview. And so, really kind of keeping your radar up. And if the company is done with their interview process and you have more questions, ask for another discussion. It really should be completely comfortable and completely positive on both sides of the table. And when that happens, that's when somebody starts a new job and they love it. And the company is really excited that this person has joined. So it's got to be good on both sides of the table.
Exactly. And that's when 1 year later, when you call the candidate and say, hey, it's been 1 year, and they say, thank you, I still love what I'm doing, and I'm excited to still be here.
Right. Then you get to celebrate.
Exactly. And do you ring the bell when the candidates are being placed, or you ring the bell each time you talk to them?
So the bell has meaning in basically, making the match. That's what the meaning behind the bell is. But there's absolutely no reason to not, have some other celebration, a dance or ringing of the bell, or when I have a good conversation with somebody who started a job 6 months, a year ago, and they're still happy with it. As soon as I hang up the phone, I walk out into the office. And I talk to the group. Hey, I just talked to. This somebody we placed a year ago, and they're still excited, and they're like, "Oh, what are they doing?" We're always, talking about it and excited to hear what somebody's up to. And so that's a mini celebration in and of itself. Just sharing the news that somebody's really having a good experience.
That's awesome. Before we move on to the next question, I have to ask: where did the bell idea come from?
So GRN. Okay. So they. One of the nice things about being part of an organization that large and there being so many offices is you get to talk to other people who are in the same business. Like I said, we're a very small group, and so you learn so much more when you talk to people who have been there, done that. It's what we were just talking about, right? It's talking to people who have done the job that you want to do and making sure that you know what it's really like, right? And so what I'm doing now is different than what I was doing when I first started. What I'm going to be doing in 4 more years is going to be different than what I'm doing now. And it's just normal because I'm learning more and I'm talking to people. And so the celebration, the ringing of the bell concept, that came from other offices. I was talking to other offices in the Global Recruiters Network, and they were basically saying, you have to celebrate these wins. You work hard. You spend a lot of time on the phone trying to get people to come to the phone and talk to you, doing a lot of research. And so when something good happens, get out of your chair and make some noise.
I love that. I really love that. So we talked about, the type of jobs that people can go for, the type of industries, and, the fact that there needs to be a match. But let's take a little bit of a step back and think about postdocs and PhDs who are currently in academia at the bench, and they are thinking about planning their career outside of academia. How should they be thinking about that?
Great question. So one thing that has helped me tremendously through my career is I have a mentor. And I think, and mentors, they're not necessarily people you've worked with. They can be people you met at a networking event and just, it clicked. And, you have a lot of respect for the person and they have a lot of experience under their belt and you can learn from them. I think a mentor is great because, my mentor is Rick Fulbright. So I met Rick 30 years ago, and he and I have remained in touch ever since. and he's funny because he knows me well enough to say, "What are you doing that for? You're not going to have fun doing that." Or, why don't you just outsource that? Why are you spending so much time trying to figure out how to be an IT person when that's not your forte? He just knows me well enough after all the time that we've worked together, and he's retired, and I still talk to him on a regular basis. He just knows me well enough to say, Mark, pull out a mirror, look in it, and do what you're good at. And a lot of times he has said to me, he's the one who brought me into sales. He's the one who said to me, you know what? I've been watching you interact because I started as an application scientist. Yeah. And he said to me, I've been watching you interact with the sales team. I've been watching you interact with customers, and you should really consider trying sales. And I had never even thought of it previous. I was, I was going to be a research scientist. That was my career path. And it just, it opened my eyes to a whole new area of this industry that I could, enjoy and really thrive in. So I think a mentor is a huge part.
I think I love that. And again, I think mentors and networking, those are two words again that not that they don't make sense to me, but I think they need to be explained. And again, it's built on a long-term relationship that develops over time.
Yes. Yeah, and I think the way to look at it is people joke about having a work spouse. A mentor is like a work parent. Like Rick's my work dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
when exactly. I need advice, who do I go to? I call Rick. He's my work dad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in selecting or finding a mentor, someone who doesn't have one, it takes time, it takes patience, and don't rush into it. Like try and just talk to people. I think the secret behind it with networking and also finding a mentor is just talk to people. Be open, talk to people, and surround yourself with people with who you get along well, but also you look up to or are more advanced in their career.
Right. People who are doing the things that you want to do.
Yes.
Right. And then are successful and good at it. Those are the people that you want to really, really learn from. Build that relationship, invest in that relationship.
Yeah. And be patient. It's not like you're going to find someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, do you want to be my mentor? And not even getting to, but the reason I'm saying this is because it's to me, when I'm thinking back to Yamina as a PhD student or Yamina as a fresh postdoc, I just couldn't figure out, okay, what are the concrete steps? I'm a scientist, so I can think in abstract, thoughts, but whenever it comes to taking an action, I need concrete steps.
Right.
So step 1, step 2, step 3.
So concrete steps, have a mentor, right? Make sure that you have a presence online, right? I'm surprised. I'm always surprised how many people you go out and try to find them. And I'm just shocked that people don't have a presence online. First of all, I wonder how, because every once in a while I Google myself, I'm like, how did that get out there? But, having control over what that presence is and what it says, that's really because you wanted to say, I'm interested in doing this. You wanted to be out there so that people can pick up on the fact that, I'm a bench scientist, but I'm very much interested in, an industry opportunity. Or I'm a bench scientist who is very much interested in running a core lab, at the university. Just putting something out there, letting people know what you're interested in, I think is really important. So have a presence, have a mentor, have a presence, network like crazy. and really talk to people about what is it like to do that job. And then the ones that speak to you, the ones that excite you, do your homework, get out and what companies are involved in that specific area. What are the job? What are the career paths? I hate to. This sounds like a selfless plug, and I apologize up front about it. But a lot of times, I'll reach out to people, and because I'm a recruiter, I get ignored. Figure out who are the recruiters that understand the industry and can bring value, and talk to them. Even if they're reaching out about a job that you don't think is a good fit, that recruiter is talking to people every single day, talking to companies every single day, if they're doing their job, and they're learning a lot about, what companies are looking for, what are the skills that you need to develop to get the next step in your career. It just, a recruiter can be a valuable asset if you take the time to find one who understands the industry.
I love that. And while you were just mentioning a couple of thoughts, so I'm going to try and structure them. You mentioned recruiters. I think it is important. Let's take a step back. We talked about networking. Networking you can do with a variety of people. Recruiters are the type of people that you would like to network with. Again, it goes down to personality. Find the recruiters with whom you like talking, like you and I are doing right now. Right. And perhaps, you're going to talk to the recruiter. It's not a job for you, but you know of someone. Making that connection or making that introduction or offering to, send a message to your network about the position that they're trying to fill, it is a building block to building that relationship with a recruiter. So that's really, really important to do. Yes, about online presence, I cannot stress enough that it is important to have an online presence. The minimum that you should have as a human looking for a job or wanting a career is a LinkedIn profile with a picture. Because, and I'm pretty sure if I would ask you, I think the answer to that, whenever you find a name of a candidate, the first thing you do, you go Googling them. And hopefully the first thing that comes out is a LinkedIn profile. And I spend enough time on LinkedIn to see that, sometimes the person doesn't exist on LinkedIn, doesn't exist at all on Google. Or if they do have a LinkedIn profile, you can't figure out what they look like. What did they do? They have 2 connections and the LinkedIn profile is not filled out. I think there's a minimum requirement as a job seeker and as a scientist, as a human at the end of the day with LinkedIn, that you have that set up.
Yeah. Just somebody who wants a career.
Yeah.
Right. If you want a career, LinkedIn is professional networking.
Yes.
Online. And so that's you're 100% correct. And neither one of us work for LinkedIn.
Nope. No, we might add that. No, neither of us works for LinkedIn. Thank you for that distinction. We are not plugging in any ads for LinkedIn. This podcast is not sponsored by LinkedIn, although it could be. But it's important. People, and I think with technology, we talked a little bit about the use of technology in networking, jumping on a Zoom call with, or any type of calls, virtual calls with someone. I think you can leverage technology to build your own website. You can have a website for free. Having a great headshot is so important. Not with a lab coat on, or not you looking in the microscope, or having these odd profile pictures. I think it's important to show to the world and to yourself. I think it's more that you are a strong candidate, you are a scientist, and you are most of all a professional. That's really important.
And an approachable person.
Yes, I think the human side is really important when it comes to that. But a human professional, I don't know if that makes sense, or a professional human. That could also be one way of going about it.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's go more deep a little bit into the advice. I think you offered valuable advice to our listeners here. Can we take a moment and talk a little bit about your advice to scientists who want to find their dream job?
Okay. So there are a couple of essential tools in a job search, right? We've talked about interviewing and being comfortable talking about yourself and My advice always in an interview is tell a story. Don't just answer a question, right? If somebody asks you, do you have experience with a specific technology? You could say, yes, I've worked with that technology for 5 years. And you've answered the question, the box gets checked, and they move on, right? Or you can say, we had a problem in a project we were working on. We kept running into difficulty, I don't know, with cell viability. The cells were just crashing again and again. Finally, we brought in this technology that helped us to analyze the media, and we realized that there were essential nutrients in the media that were just depleting every single time, and it was killing the cells. And so, yes, I've worked with that technology, and I found it to be incredibly valuable to help us solve this problem, right? Now I've told a story that the person's going to walk away and remember, right? So going into an interview, always try to go in with 3 really good stories that you're going to tell. And they should always be related to questions that you're expecting you're going to be asked, right? Yeah. If you're coming into a job where you're going to be taking care of cell culture, well, they're probably going to ask you about, what type of cell lines have you worked with? What technologies have you leveraged? Why did you use those technologies? So having some stories around the requirements of the job, I think, is a really good thing. Another essential tool is the resume, right? And a lot of people, the resume, when you read it, it reads like a job description. And I think that happens because we're given this perpetual guidance that you want to tailor your resume to the needs of the specific job that you're interviewing for. And so you wind up reading the job description and then writing your resume to match. And then when you read your resume, it sounds like a job description, right? Yeah. So what I always tell people to do is don't tell people what your responsibilities were. Tell them what your accomplishments were when you had that job. And if there's ever a way to quantify those accomplishments, you can use percentages. If you're concerned that some of the numbers might be confidential, use percentages. But some way to quantify that I reduced the number of failures by 15% is a quantifiable achievement. And by saying I achieved that, then you can infer that you were responsible for that particular, whatever it is, cell culture. And so I think that's a really important thing. And the other thing that I'll tell people all the time when it comes to a resume is do what I call a brain dump resume, where you write everything, put it all in one document. You wind up with like a 6-page resume, and people are like, oh my God, you're crazy. Nobody will ever read that. And you're right. But what you do is now I've got everything captured. And now I'm going to apply for a job, and I know what the requirements are of the job. All I do is go to my brain dump resume and delete the stuff that doesn't matter. Yes. And it automatically collapses down into a 1-2-page resume that's so targeted to the job, it works beautifully. And then you're not rewriting your resume. You write it once, and you just delete out the stuff that doesn't matter. And that one resume becomes the foundation for every single application and every single job that you're going to go out and take a look at. So those are some of the essential tools, right, to finding the next job. Research is so important. Be on Fierce Biotech. Be on all the newsletters that are in our industry that help people to understand what's going on in the industry and what companies just got funded and therefore are probably hiring. What company just got bought by another company. All this stuff is really, really important to be aware of and help you to chart your career based on the type of company that you like to work for and which ones are likely to have opportunities. So those probably, those have got to be the top 3. I would. That was
$1 million advice, and I love that. The resume advice is really valuable, and the other thing is, yes, I love the fact that you mentioned do your research. I received messages on LinkedIn from people asking me to give them a job when I was in no position. I wasn't even involved in anything. And I received a 16-page long CV. Nothing. And I just said to the person, I'm sorry, but I'm not in a position of, I don't know what you're talking about. This may not be for me. And if I may advise you, please, reduce that 16 pages to 2 that are relevant to that job description.
Right. Yeah, there is a point in the interview process where the CV with all of the publications and all of the posters and all the presentations is important and should be shared. It's not right up front.
Exactly. Right. And it also depends on the type of job that you're applying to. So if you're your PhD and you're looking at a sales job or a marketing job, the list of your publications and poster presentations may not be as relevant as if you're, going into project management role where you specifically would be working with the technology that you're an expert in already.
Right.
That's I think that. Thank you, Mark. That's $1 million advice for sure. The other question I had for you is, you specifically on a day-to-day basis, how do you help PhDs land their job? We talked about this a little bit, but if you can get into a little bit more detail.
So my process is always the same, and it's really getting to know people and getting to know their goals. So usually the connection is made because I've reached out about an opportunity I'm working on. And the first conversation that I have with people is really, hey, tell me a little bit about your career. Tell me about what your goals are. What do you want to do next? And then I tell them about the position I'm working on, and we decide together if it's a fit or not a fit. And a lot of times it's not a fit, but that's okay. And then I'll schedule a follow-up call where I can dig a little deeper into, okay, so that last opportunity wasn't a good fit. What is? What are the things that really excite you? And let's talk about that in pretty good detail. And it's really getting to know the person and getting to know what excites them, what their goals are, where they want to be, what they want to do next. And then I'm always reaching out to companies saying, hey, I just spoke to somebody who is really, exceptionally skilled in the following areas. And based on what I know of your company, you might be able to use, a person with this talent. Can we talk? So half of my day is talking to candidates, and half of my day is talking to potential hiring managers and companies that may not have even posted a job, but if I know that they're recently funded and growing, I know that they're hiring, right? And so it's getting to know the candidate, making sure I understand what's important to them and what skills they do have, and then going out to the companies and saying, you need to meet this person. You guys really need to meet this person because their skill set is so in line with what you're doing. Can I introduce you? And so that's really the deep. It's not very complicated, but it is one of those things that if you follow that process and continue to really get to know people and really get to know companies and do your research and make the connections, then sooner or later you wind up finding a really great opportunity.
I love that. And
I should mention, just being 100% honest as a recruiter, the vast majority of jobs are still found through somebody's personal network. You can work with the greatest recruiter in the world, and that person may help you find a great job, but it's still the majority of jobs are found through your personal network. And so work with recruiters, but also always work your personal network. Keep talking to people and asking them, hey, I'm looking for a job as a project manager. Do you know of any companies who are looking for project managers? So part of that networking is also identifying your own opportunities.
I love that. I think there are so many valuable points of advice and so many interesting things that you just mentioned. I'm going to try and organize my thoughts again. One is networking. Two is communication. So basically what you are doing as a recruiter is really using your network, using your communication skills, doing your own research on the market, on the companies, and really following the basically the advice that you just gave to candidates. You have an online presence, you know how to communicate, you understand the science, or at least you can understand the science because you are a scientist by training, but also you've been bathing in the industry and knowing what's going on. And I love the fact that the skills that a PhD or a postdoc should be using or should be building and using to find their next step in their career are exactly the same skills that you are using on a daily basis as a recruiter to make that match between employers and employees.
That's very well said.
I love it.
Spot on.
I really love it. I have one more question for you. And we talked a lot about, communication and mentorship and networking. What is the advice that you would have to PhDs so that who already made that jump to industry, have their first job, but how should they be thinking about their career, and how should they what should they be doing in order to have a successful career long term?
That's a great question. Continue getting educated, right? There's lots of different ways to do that. Certifications, trainings on new technologies that companies offer. Even a lot of industry, a lot of companies in industry will support the next degree, right? If you're a master's level, they'll help you get your PhD. So always educate, right? Always be learning. I think that's really important. If you've made that leap from academia into industry, now you're in a whole new setting, right? Not everything. Most things are different, right? And so be curious, learn about why do we do things this way in industry when in academia it was completely the opposite. Who are the people that are, doing the essential support roles for what I do, and get to know what they need and what you can do to make their job easier, right? And then the same thing the other way around. If you've got somebody to whom you're feeding, the results or a protein or whatever it is that you're passing on to the next person, okay, when they receive that, what are they doing with it? And how can you deliver it in such a way that it makes their job easier, right? It's just asking those questions and continuing to network and learning about what's around you, because you may find that one of the jobs that supports your function is really interesting. And that can be a career path for you, or the opposite, right? The teams that you're supporting, boy, it'd be great to be part of that downstream expression team. That could be a really exciting career path. And so it's a very similar thing of keeping your eyes and ears open and communicating with people and just asking simple questions about, hey, take 5 minutes to tell me what you do and how I can make you successful at what you're doing, make your job easier. Because you're always interacting with people, and it's if you've got that curiosity and you've got that attitude about making everything easier for everyone around you, then people want to talk to you. Right. And they want to tell you about what's going on, and they want your ideas. And then it's easier to network and grow in your career. So educate, talk to everybody around you, keep your eyes and ears open, learn both on the job and off the job.
I love it. Where can people find you?
So I do have a LinkedIn profile. So that's relatively easy. My last name is not easy to spell, so I'm glad you advised me to pop it up here on the LinkedIn. I'm sorry, on the Zoom window. I also have email addresses and phone number. We have a Global Recruiters of Windsor website, my phone number is probably the easiest way, because, like I said, I spend most of my day on the phone, and that's 860-325-3505.
That's awesome. So, we're gonna have on the podcast page a page dedicated to you, where people can find this interview, but also find your bio, and as well all the links and information leading back to you.
Great. Thank you again so much for this opportunity. I really enjoyed our conversation, and it's just I think what you're doing with Dr. GPCR is essential. And it's just a wonderful thing for scientists, way scientists can learn about new stuff and network with each other. And a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, you're doing with Dr. GPCR. So awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I really thank you for your time. I think the listeners are going to love hearing all your advice. I certainly loved talking to you. And I think if the take-home message is really be open, have a LinkedIn profile, and talk to people.
Absolutely. Keep the communication going.
There you go. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks, Amina.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Dr. GPCR podcast. I'd like to thank our guest, as well as our team members, Attila Forrest, Shivani Sajdev, Ines Pinheiro, and Alexa Duran. We look forward to seeing you live at the next Dr. GPCR Virtual Cafe. Visit drgpcr.com/virtual-cafe for more information. Also, please subscribe to the Dr. GPCR newsletter today. You can also find us on YouTube, and if you like our podcast, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also leave us a testimonial at drgpcr.com/testimonials. Another great way to support us is to share your favorite Dr. GPCR program with your network and colleagues. Also, email us with any questions and suggestions at hello@drgpcr.com. Until next time, stay safe.